Hey everybody, welcome to the Fired Up with CJ show. Today we have Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., who is possibly one of my favorite guests, all-time favorite guests. And we're talking about his first book, The Five Levels of Attachment. Welcome, Miguel.
Hey CJ, thank you so much for having me on your show. It's always great to be with you.
Oh, it's always wonderful. It's like you were saying, before the commercial, it's like a dance. It's like a wonderful, beautiful dance. So I wanted to ask you first, when we recorded the show a while back, you talked about the Smoky Mirror, which is just a Toltec story that your grandmother told you, because the Toltec wisdom is passed down through an oral tradition. So your grandmother had told you the story about the Smoky mirrors, which is what this whole book is. It's kind of a modern translation of that story. Can you tell me a story again? Can you tell us a story again?
Sure. Well, it's my grandmother told it to me, and then my dad told it to me, and my dad shared it in the book, The Four Agreements. Basically, it's one day, if I remember correctly, how my grandmother and my dad both told it to me. An apprentice in the tradition that he was already in decides to go into the cave by the place in Teotihuacan. He goes into this cave, and underneath he sees his own reflection in the water that's in this underground cave. When he sees his own reflection, he sees himself just as he is. Before that, when he saw himself, he only saw the son or the apprentice or all these things. But this time around, he saw himself and looked into his eyes and saw nothing but life. And he had this moment of clarity, of seeing himself in that communion, an experience, you can say, with divinity, an experience with life, but he saw himself and he loved himself. It was a communion with himself. As he left that cave and onto the starry night, he looked up into the stars, and he saw that the stars were looking back at him, smiling, and he saw himself in the stars. And then he realized that he himself was made all of stars, that he and the stars were all one, and everything was all together. We're all one. So that communion began to expand itself. And that when he saw himself in the mirror, it was basically before he couldn't see himself. All he saw was smoke. All he saw was a distortion. And in this moment of clarity, applying everything he's learned and letting go of a lot of things he had learned, he saw himself as life. And at that moment, he gave himself a name so that he can remember himself. He named himself Tezcatlipocatl, which is a Nahuatl word that means the smoky mirror. In the same way one would have named themselves, like to remember a moment of clarity. He began to share this with everyone, and they considered him blasphemy. But that moment was already there, and he began to share it little by little with everyone. So the smoky mirror is that individual that can see himself or herself as is. This cave was basically, according to the oral tradition, a cave underneath the Pyramid of the Sun in Teotihuacan. Of course, this is all oral tradition. So in my book, The Five Levels of Attachment, I'm basically retelling the story of Tezcatlipocatl. At level 5 fanaticism, that smoke is completely thick, that it doesn't let us see beyond the tips of our own noses. It distorts our perception. It distorts the world so we can make it fit what we think it should be. And then we have a moment of clarity, a little moment of doubt, a little moment of skepticism, where we make that one question and we regain and see for the very first time, or just simply remember it for the very first time in a long time, our true strength, which is our own free will. our ability to say yes and no, something that the smoke had controlled for a long, long time, because our belief and idea controls that free will, that intent, that energy that is us. So as we begin to let go of our fanaticism, our attachment to an idea that's more important even of our own life, then we begin to question it, and it allows us to go to level 4, which is internalization, where we begin to internalize this image. So if we use the example of Tezcatlipoca, this is the moment where we clear a little bit of the smoke and we see our own reflection, and we think the reflection and I are one. Actually, no. Sorry, I got ahead of myself here. At level 4, the reflection is the truth, and I am just not the truth. That the reflection that I see is the truth of what I perceive. Thus, I become aware that my reflection, which is what we know as knowledge is the perfect reflection of life, and we believe knowledge to be the truth from that point of view. So we have to live up to this expectation. It gives me the rules by which I live my life.
And that's internalization.
Yes, we internalize an image, a mask, via domestication. If we put it in a very common sense word, I will use my identity to domesticate or to impose conditional love onto myself. And if I have that with myself, I'm going to give that to everyone, because I have to make life fit my definition of what should be. Both domesticating my family, domesticating my friends, domesticating everyone, so that they can fit my definition of what I believe to be the truth.
I just got something in aha. So it's not only the mask that I wear, it's like becomes a permanent mask, and I place that mask on everyone else.
Exactly. Basically, if we put it in the form of mask, at level 5, the mask and I are completely one, and the mask controls my intent.
Right.
At level 4, the mask, there's the beginning of a separation between me and the mask, but the mask still is that thing that I internalize, and I have to live up to the mask. I have to live up to this image. This is where ego and personal importance really come in.
Right.
The function of ego is to keep the illusion alive. If we see ego from that point of view, ego is simply the thing that keeps this image that has received the acceptance of peers and everyone in the form of conditional love, which means it keeps what I am not alive. I continue to pretend to be something I am not,
right?
Because that thing that I am not receives all the rewards, the benefits,
right,
which is acceptance,
right,
is worthy of that prize, that reward, and we domesticate ourselves. And the moment we become aware of that and we decide to accept ourselves just the way we are, that we begin to forgive our own trespass against ourselves. Meaning by that, for example, let me use myself as an example. My name is Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. If I want to live up to that image, I don't take things personal. I don't make assumptions. I always do my best, and I'm impeccable with my word.
Right, you have to live your dad's 4 agreements. Yeah.
And if I don't live up to the 4 agreements, then I am not worthy of the name Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., which means I am not worthy of my own love. At that moment, I have corrupted the 4 agreements and turned them into the 4 conditions of my personal freedom. And I begin to subjugate people around me, like saying, I only hang out with people who are impeccable with their own word.
Right.
and instead of being something that is supposed to allow us to transcend, to have personal freedom, I subjugate myself with this agreements.
Right, you've domesticated yourself,
because I'm trying to live up to this expectation.
Right.
So to let go of level 4 is to accept the truth. I do take things personal. I sometimes make assumptions. Sometimes I take things personally. And sometimes I'm not impeccable with my word. And then sometimes don't do my best. Just ask my wife. Basically, it's just that I accept the truth. This is who I am. Just like an alcoholic says, my name is so-and-so, and I'm an alcoholic, or I'm a drug addict.
Right.
It's a moment where we accept the truth. It's something that allows us in level 5 to let go of our attachment to the illusion. When we're able to let go enough to question it, we go into level 4. And when we're able to recognize that this is who I am. If I take things personal, it's because I want to take it personal.
Right.
But I've realized that I don't want to. I read this chapter in this book, The Four Agreements. I begin to look at what are my triggers, and that moment of choice, which is the only place you can really execute it. I have a choice. If I take it personal, it's because I want to take it personal. But I also have the choice of not taking it personal. And this agreement right here reminds me that I have that choice. And I say, no, I don't want to take it personal. That's when this agreement becomes alive. Because an agreement is just a word that describes the action of saying yes, of manifesting something, which means this particular agreement reminds me of how I want to use my intent. And when this happens, I become aware that all those years I've domesticated myself with this image, and I forgive myself. Like Christ said, forgive them, Father. They do not know what they do. Well, forgive myself. Forgive me. I didn't know what I was doing. And that forgiveness allows us to let go. Yeah. So we enter level 3.
Interesting. And level 3 is identity.
Yes. So you can say the smoke begins to clear, and I start seeing myself and my reflection as one. So both I and the reflection are the truth, whereas level 4, the reflection was the truth, and I couldn't see myself.
Ah, right, okay.
And at level 5, I couldn't even see the reflection. I always saw everything but distortion. But at level 3, if we use the story of Tezcatlipoca, me and the reflection are one. Me and knowledge are one.
And then, so that's level 3. So here's the thing that I think that's really important, because as I reread your book and I recalled our previous conversation, that all these levels are fine, as long as you recognize that you're at that particular level. So, as you were describing internalization, which is level 4, as long as you know it's a choice that you're making, and you are subjugating your own self to these standards, and you understand that the potential repercussions when you subject yourself to these standards, and you place a mask on other people's faces, that you're subjecting others. That's a choice. Like, you can choose to do that or not. It's up to you. And there's actually maybe not even it's not a bad thing. But although I wonder about fanaticism, because as I was rereading your book, I thought, well, I can't see any possible benefit of fanaticism, that you want to stay in the fanaticism level.
Well, that's the thing. When we see it from the point of view of domestication, we want to make ourselves be at level 1 at all time, and we consider what's good or what's bad. Right. But if you just see it as something we do, as a truth that exists at this moment, level 5 is basically a consequence of a choice that we forgot that we had. And remembering that we have that choice allows us the opportunity to see ourselves as we can. So that's the key.
Yeah. So then after level 3 is identity. So in that particular case, you're seeing yourself in the mirror. So in the first case, you're covered by level 5, it's all smoke. All you see is the smoke. Level 4, you see just the projection outside of yourself, which is a mask, right? And then level 3 is that you look into the mirror and you see yourself.
Yeah, for example, let's use the example of a lawyer talking to a Marine. And I say this because I have 2 friends who are both.
Oh, wow, okay.
So one has an attachment of what a Marine is, and it could be either a good one or a bad one. At level 5, they have this negative point of view of each other. One a lawyer that blah, 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 and one is a Marine, blah, 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 blah. And they never see each other as a human being. They only see each other as a symbol. Either a positive or a negative. But they never see each other as a human being. We only see the symbol. And of course, that symbol is an identity. That's what an identity is. An identity is just a symbol that allows us to understand one another, especially when we use knowledge with each other. Because right now, for example, I'm using knowledge to talk to you. That's using knowledge as an instrument between you and I.
Right.
But when we're so attached at level 5, it's really hard to see humanity where we only see symbols.
Right. You're a lawyer, you're a Marine, and I know exactly what that means, and I'm not going any further because your mask is you, and I don't even care about who you are as a human being. That's
exactly.
level 5.
So instead of seeing two human beings talking to one another, we only see the mask or the stereotype, and we have either a prejudgment, either positive or negative, but that doesn't allow for that bond to exist just as two individuals, of two humans talking to one another. We only see, well, you better be a good lawyer if you do this, this, that, and if you don't, grr. And if you're a Marine, you better be grr, 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 and grr if you don't. So basically, from level point of 5, we don't see the humanity in another individual.
At all. They're just objects. There's no
we only see the personification of an idea. And if we agree with that idea, we will accept that person in our life. And if we don't like that idea, we will reject that person in our life before we even know them.
You're a Republican or you're a Democrat. I know what you're all about, and I don't even want to hear what you have to say.
So and that's the thing where we can distort a beautiful tradition.
Right.
We can distort a wonderful tradition. And like I say, I can say a Toltec and any other tradition, and instead of seeing humanity, we only see, oh, you're a Toltec, or you're this, or you're that. And all of a sudden, instead of being this opportunity for a bond, it's just simply this world constructed by images I project onto people.
I see. So I mean, fanaticism, and my earlier question was, could it even be a positive thing? It is what it is, right? You may actually be a fanatic, but to even just say, I'm a fanatic, and I actually recognize it, I'm a choice, and I'm going to be a fanatic, and that's okay. Like, I'm a Seahawks fanatic, right? I mean, I'm a fanatic, and I'm choosing to be fanatic, and it's okay. I mean, so I guess it's a choice, like you were saying before. Yeah.
Well, it's a choice that we forgot we made. And sometimes we forgot we made it because we were domesticated into it.
Right.
To me, my favorite story of a level 5 is the story of Don Quixote de la Mancha, where he loves his book so much that one day he becomes Don Quixote de la Mancha. And every single book he's ever read contains the rules by which he will live his life, how he's going to accept himself, and how he's going to see the world. Where he sees a beautiful white stallion of a horse named Rocinante, everyone else sees a very old and very thin, sad-looking horse. That he sees a girl, and because he's attracted to her, and because he is a knight-errant according to his books, and he can only possibly fall in love with princesses, then this girl, her name becomes Dulcinea del Toboso, where she is all these attributes that a knight is supposed to do, yet Sancho Panza and everyone else sees Aldosa Lorenzo, a young barkeep that is brownie because she's working at a bar and she carries all these heavy stuff, and I wouldn't call her heavy set, she is just buff, she's strong. But nothing like Don Quixote, which means Don Quixote sees what he wants to see. He doesn't even see this girl. He never even talks to her. Yet he projects onto her this image of Dulcinea, and if he ever does meet her, he's going to domesticate her to fit what Dulcinea should be.
Yes.
And that's where you can say that Don Quixote he is a knight-errant, and his rules and his engagements are noble, but he doesn't see the world as is. He only sees giants, and he sees giants because if he sees giants, he is worthy of the name Don Quixote. But if he sees windmills, then his name is Alonso Quijano, his real name. And Dulcinea becomes Aldosa Lorenzo, and he sees Rocinante as the thin, sad-looking horse.
Yeah.
But because he doesn't accept life as is, he wants to see what he wants to see. After his incident with the windmills, he has concocted an illusion. Oh, Sancho, how easily you are fooled. Don't you know that my arch nemesis, the magician, turned these giants into windmills just to make me look bad? which means that even when he sees the truth,
Right.
he creates a story that allows him to continue to see that his illusion. Now, in the example that I'm giving you, I like it because Don Quixote is a very lovable gentleman, but even in his love sense of humility, which is that role of Don Quixote, he doesn't see the world as is, because if he does, then he is not worthy of the name Don Quixote.
I love it. That's a perfect story.
So if we use that example in our humanity, instead of because as soon as we use, like I used the example of lawyer and marine, but we use any other stuff, then we fail to see the humanity in any of those things, especially depending on how attached we are to those. Mm-hmm. But if we see the humanity of an individual who's completely attached to an idea, then we see it from a totally different point of view.
Mm. All right, so if we go back to the internalization and using your lawyer or marine example, I may be a lawyer, I meet another lawyer, I'm going to take my mask of a lawyer and put it right on him or her, and I'm expecting them to fulfill my expectations of my lawyer, what lawyers are or not. Is that what the internalization part of it is? Yeah,
an example, for example, like with my friends, and the way they joked about it is, well, I've gotten to know you a little bit, because that's the thing about level 4. You can still have an opportunity to see someone else,
right?
And if they realize that there's someone else, they're like, "Well, you're a different type of lawyer. You're a what's it called? You are a civil rights lawyer. You are a one of the good lawyers, and you live up to them. All of a sudden, like it turns into good or bad,
right?
And we still, but if we're attached enough to our idea, we begin to domesticate that individual to fit our idea of what that lawyer should be, or a marine. In the same way that Don Quixote would domesticate Dulcinea, we would domesticate the people in our life in that way. And all of a sudden, this is conditional love. It may not. The difference between level 4 and level 5 really come down to this. At level 4, domestication, the reward is still that conditional love, that acceptance, that conditional acceptance. Mm-hmm. The punishment is judgment, self-judgment and judgment.
Right.
At level 5, fanaticism, that acceptance is still the same, that conditional love, that conditional acceptance. The punishment is hate, anger, prejudice. From that point of view, the opposite of love is not anger and hate. Anger and hate just simply are the instruments by which we really impose the real opposite of love, which is love. The opposite of love is love. Or to put it more simply, the opposite of unconditional love is conditional love.
Right.
And at level 4 and level 5, we are so attached to our conditional love based on our ideas that we do not see humanity, or we're trying to make humanity and life fit our description, which is what at level 4 we do. We domesticate everyone in life to try to live up to it.
Right.
And if they do, they're worthy of love. And if we do that to ourselves, you see, we can only give what we have.
Yeah, and I see how this is all related to self-love, because if you're judging everyone else, you're judging yourself. So it's an act of not loving yourself, because you have to fulfill these obligations, like you're saying. I have to be. My dad wrote the 4 agreements, therefore I must be the 4 agreements, and I'm a Toltec. So so it's like it's an act of not loving yourself. It's conditional love. I must follow these rules in order to be loved. So I see the connection to love now.
Well, and I would only make one correction on that one. A person is loving themselves, but loving themselves conditionally.
Right.
Always trying to reach up to this carrot that's elusive.
Right.
The motivator to do anything is love from that point of view.
Yeah.
So in the sense that we can only give what we have. Whenever we judge someone, we're punishing them for agreements they never made.
Yes.
And we're trying to domesticate them through the punishment. And if they don't want the punishment, then we give them the reason how we are able to accept them. So if we see the people in our life and we're trying to continuously mold them into being who we think that they should be, then we're domesticating them with a mask called an identity, and we're going to make them fit that. The reason why we do that is because we're doing that to ourselves.
Yeah.
Once again, I'm like, if I use Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., that mask, that illusion, that the only way I can reward myself is to live up to the 4 agreements or the 5 agreements, be skeptical but learn to listen. Mm-hmm. Oh no, I forgot about the 5th agreement. How can I call myself? And there you go, the diatribe, the self-judgment, the downward spiral of our own diatribe creates this rejection. Mm-hmm. And it does that so we can spur ourselves to live up to this expectation. Mm-hmm. And this is where ego and personal importance comes in.
Okay, so let's go to level 3 when I'm actually looking at the mirror and I actually see myself. Mm-hmm. Let's do levels 3, 2, and 1. So using any of the examples, you've given so many, but whether it's a Marine and the lawyer or yourself, what does level 3, 2, and 1 look like?
Well, the thing is that, for example, right now, we're using knowledge in order to understand each other. Even you're in Seattle, I'm in the Sacramento area.
Yeah.
And we're talking to one another. We can physically see each other because there's a little video that allows us to see each other. But yet, the way we're interacting with one another is through knowledge, this understanding. And knowledge is this combined with symbols, either by the spoken word, written word, the drawings or symbology or hand gestures. We are continuously expressing an idea.
Right.
So an identity, that mask we call identity, is just another one of those symbols. And one of the requirements that we have as humanity is that we need to know. The Gestalt principle of closure says that if you draw a circle and you don't close it, our mind has the capacity to imagine that circle closed. Or if you draw 2 sides of a triangle, we have the capacity to close that because the mind naturally wants closure. Closure in the form of a geometric shape, such as a triangle or a circle, or closure in the form of understanding the world, or an event or a story. And a story is called reading between the lines.
Yeah, no, I think of it as being at a cocktail party when someone's like, so what do you do?
Yeah, exactly.
But I need to know, because if I don't know what that closed circle is, it's just going to disturb me.
Yeah. So basically, this is that missing piece of the, let's say, that missing line in the triangle. We create all these stories that allows, or little things that allows us to create the whole. This is what we know as an assumption. Mm-hmm. Now, when we know people, we need to know who they are. Thus, it allows us to interact. So at level 4 and level 5, an identity is this thing that creates this gap between us. Mm-hmm. At level 3, is this thing that allows us to have a bond. Oh, this is your experience in life. Oh, you're a lawyer, you're a Marine. Wow, you said yes to being both. We well, let's talk to one another. Instead of being this thing that we condemn each other for, we see it as simply this thing that expresses our passions in life. Those people who are lawyers enjoy the law. Right. They enjoy the process of the judicial system, and they understand the agreements by which we form our society.
Right.
And for example, have you ever seen the TV show The Walking Dead? With that show about
no, but you're the third person who's talked to me about that show, so I guess I should. Go ahead.
Well, here's the thing. It's a scary show, but not because, for me, it's not because of the zombies. Zombies are not that scary. But what makes it scary is that the characters can't find those agreements that keeps them safe. You
mean they've lost their identity? They've totally lost.
Well, think about it this way. In our society, we have an agreement that breaking a piece of glass is a taboo, and we don't break it. It's a mutual agreement.
Yeah.
Yet they live in a world where those mutual agreements that keep us safe do not exist. Mm-hmm. So they're constantly searching for that place where they can find that little bit of shelter called civilization, where the agreements with one another allows us to coexist with one another in safety. Mm-hmm. So from the point of view of a lawyer, they are part of that world, or the Marine, that enforce those agreements that allows us to live in this society. Because otherwise we have zombies, in this example, that do not care for your humanity. They do not care for your free will. They don't even respect your name. They will kill you because they want to eat you. Now, I'm using the example of zombies in place of any other political idea, religious concept, because it's a lot safer to talk about the behavior of zombies rather than something a lot more triggered. That's why sometimes I'll talk more about sports, because it's easier to talk about that than other things.
Yeah, yeah.
But if you see that as an act, as an action, or something, a behavior that people do, then you can see why people go into those things. And we see each other as a Marine or a lawyer.
Yeah, they're cultural norms. Now we know what to expect. Now that I know that you're a lawyer, I know something about you. I can connect with you as another human being. If I didn't know that you were a lawyer or Marine, I may have judgments associated with all of those things regardless. Mm-hmm. But knowing that is a shortcut.
Basically, it's that thing about it's that open opportunity to reach out to someone and talk to them about mm-hmm. their experience of life. Mm-hmm. It's like if I'm a fan of the Seattle Sounders, yes. and I am watching or going to a bar and I see a fan of the Portland Timbers, right. or the Vancouver Whitecaps, I'm like, hey, you've got the jerseys. Hey, you like football? I like football. Soccer. Right. Let me buy you a beer. And also, instead of being this thing of rivalry and hatred, it's the thing that unifies us. We both like soccer. Let's talk about it. Let's have a beer. Right. And so instead, from that point of view, it's just simply from the point of view of three identity. It's just simply knowledge and I, the symbol and I, are one. Mm-hmm. Just simply saying that my identity gives me the sense of self, or that grounding sense of self, by allowing myself the opportunity to have a definition that allows me to understand myself. Mm-hmm. So you can say from that point of view that level 3, in my point of view, level 3 and level 4 internalization are the majority of the people in the world. Mm-hmm. Level 5 fanaticism, they're a small minority. They're very, very, very loud. Right. But they're the minority. The rest of us live somewhere between our domestication and conditional love, or unconditional love in the form of knowledge. The only requirement is I need to know who you are, because your voice will have meaning to me if I know who is expressing it. Right. Right. So for example, you're an interviewer. All right, now I know what you're doing. But outside of this interview, you're just CJ. Right. And you're the human being, and we will engage each other in conversation because the bond between us dictates the agreements between us. Right. But at level 4, level 5, it is our agreements that dictates the bond.
Wow, that's an important distinction. Yeah.
Basically, our beliefs, an idea is if we put it in a simple, we let our mind, we let our head dictate how we're going to relate to other people. Right. If I have an idea, then my agreements dictate the bond. But if I see you as a human being, if I see you as an individual, then that bond will dictate the agreements you and I have. And the only difference is what, how, and when are we going to engage each other as friends, as lovers, or as family. Mm-hmm. But the humanity is there. We can see each other.
We just got a question from the chat line from a listener who wanted to know, what is the name? Is there a book about this? And yes, there is a book about this. It's called The 5 Levels of Attachment, Toltec Wisdom for the Modern World. We're talking to Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. And we're talking about the 5 levels of attachment. So we're now at level 3. Tell us about levels 2 and 1.
Yeah, so to go from level 3 to 2 is becoming aware that at the root of every belief we have, there is a yes. Mm-hmm. To see ourselves as an individual. I am a living being that animates this body. Mm-hmm. So if I only see myself as a definition, then I will always see myself as that.
I'm a lawyer. I'm a Marine. Who are you, CJ? You meet me at a party. I'm a Marine. Yeah.
But if I become aware that those things are real because I said yes to that. I said yes to enlisting. I said yes to going to law school. I said yes to starting to write a book that makes me an author. Right. Then at the root of every belief I have, there is a yes. Every belief. So my identity, you won't find me in a definition. You will find me in the action of saying yes to that identity. Mm. And because I am much more. Just like my friends who are lawyer and a Marine looked at each other, and they also see the mother. They also see the father, the son, the athlete. One of them runs half marathons, and they talk about the marathon. The other one talks about, well, I'm also a very soft-hearted individual. And the other person, really, wow, which is a huge contrast to the lawyer.
Yeah.
The lawyer is very harsh, really rugged, but because she had lived up and realized that the only way she could be accepted as being a lawyer is that she has to be rugged and rich, and she has to play that part when she's in a court. But when she lets go of that mask, that identity in her own private life, the soft heart comes out. Even though she applies everything she learned, and all of a sudden it comes in. She can apply everything she learned in her life, even those moments when she doesn't have to engage being a lawyer. She can be analytical. She can be questionable. She can do all those things, but she doesn't have to live up to anyone else's expectation because her real self is shining through.
And that's preference. So how is that related to preference? That's level 2 is preference from
the reason why it's called preference, so I call it preference, is because I am a living being and I can go in any direction. For example, when I held my son in the same way my parents held me, I saw him and he can be anything he wants. He can be a lawyer. He can be a doctor. He can become a soccer player. He can be a student. He can be an author. He can be anything. And his preference is basically saying yes to one of those directions. If he wants to play music and he says yes to that direction, he starts by playing the keys and then starting to learn the basics of Beethoven's for release. Da 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 da. Of course, it won't be as smooth at the beginning, but the step in that direction has been taken, and that's basically my preference in the direction of life that I want to take. And basically, it's done with free will. You can say at level 5, free will is gone. It doesn't exist. My beliefs dictate my will. At level 4, there is an image because I'm able to make choices, but my domestication has a very strong influence on my choices of if I want to be good, I will live up to it. You know, if I'm bad, there's that. Right. At level 3, my identity colors my free will. Right. For example, if I'm Mexican American from Southern California. My wife, she's German English from Utah. I'm Catholic, she's Mormon. And the choices we make are the color of those identities. When I eat, there is queso fresco and a tortilla. And when she eats, there's that falafel and a little bit of hummus and the sauerkraut. But her free will has the color, just as mine has the color of our identities, of our choices, of our agreements. So at level 2, our free will, the ability to say yes or no, is completely free.
So in that example of the story, when the man is in the cave, what does it look like? Is level 2 when he goes out and he prefers to see that he is the stars? Like what's the
in the example of the story of the Smoky Mirror, it would be the equivalent of looking at, if at level 3 his reflection is the truth and so am I. At level 2, I am the truth and I recognize the reflection for what it is, a reflection of the truth. And knowledge is a reflection of the truth. And the knowledge, when it's reflecting life as is, that's what we know as the truth. When knowledge is reflecting life distorted is what we know as the lie. So at level 1 is the moment he's left that mirror, walked up to the stars and realized that he is the truth. I am alive. I am life. I am me. And I give life to every belief I have. And the energy that allows me to move my arms, to move my legs, is the same energy that allows me to make a thought. In fact, right now, I'm talking, and it's still the same energy I use to make a thought to make a movement, to move my arms, but now I'm using this energy to bring air into my diaphragm, slowly letting it out through the trachea, through the vocal cords in my mouth, moving to make the sounds with the muscles in my mouth to make sounds in English. The expression of knowledge that I'm perceiving, I'm able to project through this body, which means at level 2, you can say, my imagination can think of all these possibilities, thousands upon thousands of possibilities. And if I like one of them, I say yes to that. I can use my body to manifest it, to make it real. You know, like when I was in art school, because I studied visual arts in college. I'm a filmmaker and theater minor. We played a lot with abstract art. And one of the games we used to play was go up to the blackboard and draw a line down the middle. And then the other one, we think of a concept like a car. And we think about all these models. Then on the other side, we say, all right, think of all these actions. And then we mesh them together to create a possibility. And if we like one of them, we make it so, and we take a picture of it and we put it into our film. Or if we combine it, for example, let's put rabbits or animals and then put a different one of clothing, then we combine them. Like, oh, that's a nice possibility. Let's do that. And we can go beyond that, a bit more complicated, you know. But if we like it, as soon as we like one, we said, okay, let's say yes, let's manifest it. Let's use these hands. Let's use this capabilities. Let's use all these years of applying my craft that has allowed me finally to manifest something. As you can say, it long time ago when I started doing art, I couldn't draw. I couldn't tell a story. Then years later, I'm able to do that because of practice. Practice makes the master. So that's the expression of my preference. It's called passion.
So if I were to go, we went from the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So if I were to go back from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so I'm trying to make sure that I got this. So in the very first stage, it's like this field of possibility, potentiality, because you are life and you can create whatever you want because it's up to you. Now, attachment 2 or the level 2 is about preference. I may decide like I prefer to do art, or I prefer to be a lawyer. I'm preferring this particular area. And then level 3 is I have become a lawyer. Level 2 may be like, oh, I like to actually protect people, and I like to talk, and I like to argue. Those are all preferences that you have, but who knows what will happen with it. Level 3 is I've actually chosen to be a lawyer, which is now a convenient way that I can use in society so that people can understand who the heck I am. It's just a shortcut so that people can communicate, we can relate to each other. And then societally. And then level 4 is when I start saying, well, you're a lawyer, well, you're not a really good lawyer. Civil, whatever kind of lawyers are good lawyers. Let's say I'm an arbitrator, whatever. That's kind of a better lawyer than you're kind of a lawyer. You're civil law lawyer. That sucks. I'm good. You're bad. And then level 5 is when I go around saying, like, if you're not a lawyer, then you suck.
And that's the thing. Is like we go from being able to see humanity in everyone to not being able to see a single individual, only the image we want to see.
Yes. Yeah.
So you could say, if we go back to the example of when I held my baby, or my dad held me in his arms, and they saw that huge potential that is life, because this baby can be anything.
Yeah.
Well, the difference between me and that baby, that was me, is that now I know how to use my arms and my body. I know how to use my mind. And things that I forgot. You see, as we go up the levels of attachment to where you described it, somewhere along the line, I truly believe the idea of conditional love. And when that happens, I lose that communion with myself. And I begin to lose that communion with humanity and everything in life. So the thing about it is becoming aware. Now, in my life, I will go up and down the levels of attachment. I know I'm at level 3 with my teams in my sports.
Right.
I'm at level 3 with many things. And sometimes, especially during the World Cup that's coming up, I know that my attachment to being a U.S. national team fan and a Mexican national team fan and a fan of the Spanish national team, my levels will go up, one higher than the other.
Right.
And if all 3 of them get eliminated, which I doubt, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
See, that's a little bit
because
of
if
the
it
point
doesn't
coming
mean
in.
something about you, right? If it
But
doesn't mean something
that's
about
the
you,
point.
right?
That's exactly the point.
Yeah.
I can let go, I can increase. Imagine attachment like a flower. Or actually, imagine awareness like a flower. At level 1, the flower is completely open. At level 2, it closes a little bit, but since I never lost sight of who I am, that flower is able to open up when the moment closes, ends.
Right.
So it's a flower that's palpitating. So at level 3, it closes even more, but it doesn't open again. At level 4, it closes even more, and at level 5, it's complete close. I do not see it, and awareness is gone of who I am.
Yeah.
Someone once asked me, when did we lose sight of our authentic self? The answer is quite simple. The moment we prefer the lie or the illusion over the truth, which means the best way to let go of the lie or the illusion is to accept the truth when it's presented before us. And we accept the truth. It allows us to heal. It allows us to take action with free will. But most importantly, it allows me to see the people in my life and engage them and be in a bond with them for the individuals that they are, as opposed to the individuals of who I think they should be.
It's a very beautiful book. The 5 Levels of Attachment, Toltec Wisdom for the Modern World, Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. Lovely, lovely book. I'm actually, the reason why this was so relevant when I was talking in the earlier is that I've actually been examining some of my relationships and wondering, well, where am I? And in this book, in this interview, we talked about the 5 levels of attachments and how you can be aware of what level of attachment you are with no judgment on what level you're on, right?
Yep.
But that in this book, I highly recommend people read. It's a short read. Look how thin it is, but it's deep and short. If I can describe it that way. But there's lots of helpful tips in here, like if you're trying to move from level to level, what you need to do. So there's a lot of how-tos as well. So I strongly recommend this book. Thank you so much for being here.
CJ, thank you so much for this opportunity. It's been awesome. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And folks, make sure to listen. We have a whole bunch of other interviews with Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. In firedupwithcj.com.
Hey, thank you so much for listening to the Fire It Up with CJ show. I hope you enjoyed the show and that you learned something or found something that you'd like to try out. It means so much to me that you're listening to the show and love your support in any way by giving me comments below or to subscribe to the show or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.